So there are various ways to learn and everybody is different, I know that. For me, I'm very good at analytical memorizing. When I read something that has a process to it, I can easily memorize that. I just need to read it once. However, I'm not so good with memorizing keywords and stuff like the definition of words, which you may have more of that requirement when you're learning biology because you have a lot of biological terms that you need to remember. For those, you can use the flashcard to memorize all of those and go from there. People have different ways of memorizing. Some people are better when they have a visual. When they read the words, actually, they can just absorb it all, okay? Like when I read, I don't actually speak the words. I just read it and it goes in my head. Some people need to hear it. So when they read it, they need to say it out loud so they can say it and at the same time hear it. Some people need to read it and actually write at the same time. For me, I don't actually write that many notes when I'm actually studying. So some people need to do that so you can actually read the content, and then when there's something of importance, then you write it down, and people can actually learn because your hands are actually drawing it out. It slows the process down from you reading it, so you're actually looking at the words and thinking about it. Some people highlight, and I don't quite agree with the highlighting part because you just kind of make the whole thing yellow, but it's something that not works for me, but I can see it working for other people. These are just different ways of actually helping yourself, and it will be different for every person. So you gotta figure out what works for you. Lastly, you gotta figure out what you're good at learning. If you're very good at memorizing things, okay, then you might be a bit good, you know, in the field of being doctors or lawyers, because there's quite a bit more memorizing in those fields than engineering. So it really depends on what type of learner you are. If you know the type, you may be better adept at certain fields than others. One thing I should mention, which might be a bit obvious, is to not take courses that has a prerequisite before you actually take the prerequisite. So I guess I had a big head or something. I actually tried to take physics, the second course of physics, before I take the first one, which was a terrible idea. I did manage to get through it with a good grade, but the requirement is you actually have to work extra hard, like 2 or 3 times as hard, because whatever requirements you have in the second course, you actually have to go back to the first course and try to skim around to figure out what's going on first. So it's kind of obvious. It's something I did as a mistake, and so really, if it's a prerequisite, don't even try to take the next course. It's something I learned early on. Something I learned early on is that studying overnight does not help me one bit. I actually sleep at least 8 hours a day. And sometimes when I'm reading something really boring, I would fall asleep at the book because it's so boring. And then when I wake up, I continue reading. Well, let's just say that's not my best subject and I don't want to return to doing that. And if it's something that bores you that much, you really shouldn't be majoring in that subject. The very last thing I want to talk about is before you take your test, you really need to get good sleep. Get at least 8 hours of sleep before your midterm, because then you will have enough energy to actually take the final or whatever. Get enough good sleep. Get about 8, 9 hours, 10 hours even on the day before your final or midterm, because when you sleep enough, you actually have the concentration power to figure out the problem, to solve the problems in the test. One time I actually did not sleep well. I pulled an all-nighter studying because I thought maybe the more I study, the better. The next day when I was taking the midterm, I actually fell asleep in the midterm. I fell asleep for like about half of the time. And then when I woke up, I like hurriedly tried to finish the midterm, and so that did not turn out very well. So I do not recommend actually staying up and cramming. Cramming actually has its usefulness because sometimes if you learn nothing at all and you need to just soak in material very fast, that helps, but then it doesn't really stay with you. This material that you just read, let's just say you read like 200 pages right one day before the midterm or final, just to you know, pick up terms or something. When you take the final, you can kind of go, oh yeah, I remember this, let me take this check. but then you don't retain any of it. So you're just going to have a really hard time for the next course that you take. Sleep is so important because every time when you study something, all of those things get stored in your short-term memory. It is when you sleep that those short-term memories get automatically funneled into your long-term memory. So it's important to get good sleep so that you would actually absorb the material. And in college, people do drink, and if you study a really long cramming section or something, and then you go out right after and you get drunk or something and you drink a whole bunch, the thing that alcohol does is it kind of erases your short-term memory. So it's gonna just wipe out all that studying you did. So if you're gonna drink, it's better to do it way after you take the test. I know I covered a lot of information. I really hope this would help students out there to study better and get better grades, really. If you know other students, help them by giving them this video, link to this video, share it please, and let them know about how to actually study. This is Beat the Bush. Don't forget to give me a like on this video. Comment down below if you have any other kinds of studying methods that you have. I know I mentioned a lot already. And don't forget to subscribe over here. Thanks for watching.